Early in our friendship, Bernard would pause, start speaking, and interrupt himself with, "There's always a story." He has a story for everything, and something from his past, sometimes with a moral, funny. Always justified who he is, has become.
Okay, got the question. Right here. Haven't read it yet. Art story. That's not a question. Oh, you want the story of the paintings? Oh, okay. Okay, well, we'll put that down here. Question there. I'll start with this one down here. Sorry. That's a real tinker moment there. I'm going to start with this one because it's probably the least exciting of the paintings that I own. That is it's called Dry Countryside. It's an oil by Peter Marshall. And my dad fancied himself as an artist. And he actually gave this to me, or, you know, it was a Christmas gift. Under the Christmas tree, wrapped up when I was about 6 years old. Yeah, and I've never really liked it because it's just sheep in a paddock. Trying to get my head in there. It's just sheep in a paddock. And I realise Peter Marshall is quite an esteemed artist. But, you know, and at the time I was told, oh, he's a young boy. I think he's about 16 when he painted it. And, you know, he's got talent, I'll give him that. But he was an up-and-coming artist at the time, and I don't know why. My dad thought that I needed a painting of sheep in a paddock. It disappeared. This is the funny part. It disappeared. And my mum claimed, and this was after my dad died, that I took this to university to jazz my room up, and that I'd stood in the kitchen and made a very profound comment that it was my painting, I was taking it with me. No, that's not correct. I believe I stood in the kitchen and said, it's my passport, I'm taking it with me. Not to university, but that was actually a couple of years later. What I ever jazzed my room up with, I don't recall. But she then said the painting had disappeared. No, the painting never disappeared, but my clothes horse did. My clothes area that I put my clothes on, that disappeared, and I later found it in an upstairs cupboard. Someone had flogged it, so Mum kind of got the story mixed up. And then after I moved into this house, Mum was cleaning up at her place and she uncovered this painting. So that's the story of that painting. The only reason it's not hanging up, by the way, is not because I don't like it, I just haven't put it up yet. There's a hook over there, I should probably just hang it up and get that out of the way. These paintings though, and I like art that tells a story. And this one probably tells the least story. It was actually painted by my dad a couple of years before I was born. And it hung, looks a bit Bob Ross, I realise. It hung in my grandma's unit. Oh, she had, you know, the two places I remember her living. One was a unit, and the other one was in another unit, I guess, in a retirement home, and that always hung there. And Dad had given that to her. This one, however, probably hard to see it on camera, and it's wide on. I don't want to have to move it. But it was the only painting my dad painted in my lifetime. And that is actually from the farm where I lived from about age 4 to 11. And as you walked out the back door, that was part of the scenery that you saw. It's out of stall on Pomona Road, and he actually did that for my mum, and she hung it at her place. But now, every so often she has a clean out, and it's landed here. I was aware of it, I knew because he was painting in a shed that had the same view, and he was just sort of ducking out there and having a drink, and and painting this. It's the only thing he did in my lifetime. And I thought it was kind of cool because there's a little nettle down here, because there were actually nettles everywhere, and a little robin sitting there. That was his idea of humour, just to hide a couple of little things, and I guess that's where I get it from. I start to hide things. So that means a lot to me, that one, because Dad did it, and yeah, it sort of brings back a lot of memories from, well, really just of my dad. He died about 15 years ago now, and I do miss him, and I would have liked him to have done a lot more of that maybe in his retirement. He didn't, but he did go and volunteer a lot at an art gallery. This one here is the town where I grew up, and it tells a lot of story. Every time I look at it, I hear another story. But the story of this particular painting, it's called Janine's Town, painted by John Glover, who was quite a prominent artist, and in fact his family, I believe, are still around Stawell. And the reason it's called Janine's Town is back in about 1986, a young lady by the name of Janine Sparrow, who worked for the fire brigade, required a experimental heart-lung transplant, and the fire brigade got behind her and supported her and did massive fundraising activities. The whole town pitched in, and we got involved in all sorts of competitions and fun days and events, and the major raffle prize was this, which my dad won. And they actually took it down to the hardware shop where he worked, and everybody else thought they'd won it, and it was his day off, and they had to ring him up, and he was very excited to win it. But and that is the story, the town where I grew up. And out on the Black Ranges here was the farm where I grew up, and just around about here is the house that we moved into when we moved into town when I was about 11 years old. We've got the church steeple, and we've got the town hall clock. The Stawell town hall clock has two miners on it, and every hour they rock backwards and forwards panning for gold, which is really hard to see because you can't get a good view. They never put in a good vantage point for it. That's cool. And the actual vantage point of this is Stawell's claim to fame. It's called Big Hill because they just didn't think about calling it anything other than Big Hill. And Big Hill is actually, from what I understand, the world's largest artificial hill. It's actually a mullock heap. Due to the mining operations in Stawell, for some reason all the rubble, the mullock, was actually heaped up instead of being in piles around the place. It was all heaped up together. To this day there is a mining operation sort of behind that, and in the last few years they actually wanted to dig up the hill, excavate it, go looking for gold and then replace it, except the townspeople rallied behind that and wouldn't allow it. And just down the front here, real estate prices go up and down according to what the mine is doing and how close they are getting or likely to be demolishing the hill, because no one wants to live next to a mine. The town hall, you know, the centre of the town, that's where events take place. When I was a child I did some theatre. I performed in there with a group called Stage 1, which we thought was a cool name at the time. Scripts, tunes, great entertainment. And I guess Tinker has become Stage 2 for me. So that is Janine's
He
Town.
says a life unexamined is not worth living. He examines himself totally. Most people have their children's art. He has depth, details, and no fear. His family portrait, he tells the story.
So what's with the camera? There's another question. I want to take the question. I mean, this is going to be like the easiest way ever to make. I don't know, what is this? A documentary, you film, you set up the camera, you push the button, you hand me a question, you tell me to stand somewhere and you hand me a question. I'm not even sure why you're doing this. But anyway, we've already had this one. Art story. Okay. You want that story, art? Along here, I'll start with along here, like any self-respecting parent, things my children have made. Got a lot of stuff here, including this came from my son. He did that in grade 1. It's a superhero blowing his nose. Other than that, I don't know any other significance to it, but I thought it was hilarious and very, very well done. He's actually quite a good artist, my son. And this is actually a Father's Day card he made me. It was meant to be a Father's Day card made at school, and it says, "The Tinker is my dad." Just out of reference to it. My dad loves the character Special, and he's drawn Pikachu and the Ninja Turtle and Hulk. Character Special was actually a stop motion video he made. My dad loves cards. At one point I collected over 200 decks of playing cards. I've given up on that, but he's drawn a Joker card there for good reason. My dad loves my presents, because Victor used to give me the best presents, like this. My dad loves to make films. Yes, I do. And my dad loves me, and he's drawn a picture of himself, and that is just an awesome picture of my boy with his freckles, and you can sort of see his anime style there. That's cool. This one's from my daughter. She's drawn tools on it. My dad loves Snowy. That was her pet rabbit. It was the whitest rabbit I've ever seen, and big. My dad loves to fix things, because I was always fixing everything that she broke. And my dad loves me, the photo there of her. So that was her version of the My Dad book. I've also got this block of timber here. My daughter is very good with tools and good with her hands, and she found a block of timber at a hardware shop, and I left her alone. She was about 4, maybe 5 at the time, with her pink toolkit that she absolutely loved, and she nailed all these things nails in and put some screws in and put some fluffy ribbon around it, and it actually says, "I love Dad." This one here is Energy Chew. My son addicted to Pokemon. Had a go at making his own diorama of Energy Chew. He found a block of timber and decided to colour it in and cut out a couple of character and a background and stick it on there. He'd seen that as a toy somewhere and thought he'd make his own. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They are my doodles. I'm a doodler. Just checking. And I've always got a sketch pad kicking around. And I've actually got a couple here on the go. And I just doodle. Sometimes I write. Sometimes I draw. When I'm in the mood, just have a bit of a download or a chill out. And I might leave them for, I couldn't even tell you how long these ones, when I started them or how much I've worked on them. But, you know, they're just text that I've been working on. But one day I might get back to them. Slowly but surely, each one of those does actually tell a story. They may have taken 6 months or 2 years to complete, but these stories are being revealed to me. This picture here I shot in my photography phase. Mum took a look at it, decided she liked it, so I had it printed, mounted, framed, and then realised she had nowhere to hang it. And that was about the time that I bought my house, so it's had a couple of different locations here. I've shuffled it around, it's about due to get shuffled again. But I call this one Family Portrait. And the reason it's called Family Portrait is the bottles are actually in the shed at my parents' house. And from what I can remember, the bottles came from a friend's house. We grew up in Stawell, and my mum and I would go and visit one of her friends who had bought a property on the edge of town that had remains of mine shafts. They're only about deep. But I'd go up there as a kid, and Mum and I would pick up those bottles, and she was quite happy for us to have them because they could have been toxic. So let's just give them to a child. And if I remember, at some point they've just become lost over time, and we moved house. And there's this massive garage that you could fit 4 cars in, and it was very, very dark. So one afternoon I came home from school, and Dad's getting all excited like he did on random times. And he and I took some panels off the side of the shed and we put up this laser light. And that was like one of the few handyman type father-son bonding activities we ever did. And then I realised that with all that light in there, you could grow plants. My parents had a backyard nursery. They would take me to markets on weekends. So I found some verticals and some brackets, and in a very crude way I managed to get some shelving up just with some planks, and I would grow plants in there, and particularly succulents and sylvestrii, mammillarias, and I'd have to go in there every day after school and turn them around so that they would grow evenly, and they'd grow some really odd shapes, and I would sell them at markets and make pocket money. I'd also had a fish tank set up in there, and me being the nerd that I was, I had Alodia, which is a water plant, and you could actually see bubbles of oxygen forming, and that was photosynthesis happening, and I was very excited about that. And then many years later I came back to visit, just to visit Mum, and I had a camera with me, my Kodak Z740. Yeah, I remember it, and I should have given it a better burial.
He was at the end of his photography when we met. I visited him when he was hanging prints. A spider web, an Nancy's pride. Each photo was a chapter, and his story is visual.
Do I even need to read the question on this one? Because the card looks like it's another one of those art stories. So it's an art story, isn't it? Yeah. Art story. Welcome to my exhibition. This is just a hallway in my home, and at my previous house I had children's artwork everywhere, and I thought at this house I'd at least have one wall to myself. I'm not sure what's in frame here. Some of these actually did win prizes in competition. This one up here is a bit of a favourite with the blokes, which is a couple of gloves and some tools on some boards. And actually, there's a bit of a work boot there with the leather shoelace. That's a total mock-up. That was actually done on a table with an artificial light to get the shadow effect. This one over here has a skull of an owl. I no longer own the owl skull, but I did find a owl on the side of a road. I took it back to where I was living, gave it a proper burial, and then sometime later the neighbourhood cats dug it up, and I was able to find the skull but nothing else. And again, I used the same boards, and I put in a rose petal there, just to give it a bit of colour. I like that one because of the, that's one of the only few black and white ones I've got on display, but I like that one because of the contrast of the colours. Don't really have any awesome ones on display, like particularly significant ones to me. This one I love doing though, arsenic and old lace, because of the mess I got into in making it, and I wanted to get the doily in the background, get the fabric, the texture. This is quite a few years old. I wanted to get the glassware. I wanted to have something knocked over, and it's just got a bit of residue in there. And these tablets are just paracetamol. There's actually tablets in there, but I dropped red food dye onto those, and I mixed up food dye to get the colours I wanted with the liquid until I got something that was actually working with the photo. Even though it's roughly tea coloured, it took me quite a while to get a colour that I liked. And I think I shot this over a couple of days and we got a bit of residue just in the bottom of the glass there. And a pair of buttonholing scissors. So that one I love doing, and I loved spending time just moving each prop around to just get the effect that I want, and to get this kind of effect going on the base of the glass with a twist on it, but it's also playing with the depth of the coloured water going through it and the doily. And you can sort of see the doily here being distorted. There's a silver bell over here that's reflecting. So I really like that, and it tells a story, much like, I guess, in Agatha Christie style. Down here I've got tools of the trade. The scissors reappear for the buttonholing. There's some sort of a compass here that I think is more to do with cartography. There's a lens construction down here that came out of a CD-ROM. There's some switches. I wouldn't know how long I've owned those switches, but every time I got used to something, a handful of buttons, diodes, because why the hell wouldn't you put a few diodes in there, and dice. Dice were a bit of a thing with me with photography a lot, trying to sneak dice into a lot of photos. And around here we've got lace. I think that lace was either a remnant I picked up off a reel, or it came with a bra, and then some just random fabrics that came from clothing in op shops.
He's natural. Not a natural, but just natural. Bernard is himself, his own person. Not holding back, but not forgetting his past. Living each day, richer than most.